Um, 538 has released an article. Nate Silver's outlet, I believe they're owned by CNN. Not, I'm sorry, ESPN now. But anyway, that's besides the point. But he made a map. Hang on, let me just do this right here. He made an outline of what this actually looks like over the next few weeks, and how much trouble will Hillary Clinton be in if she loses Nevada, and if Bernie Sanders closes fairly close to hang on, I need to do a switcheroo here. Boom, because I think this person right there might be the one I want to talk to about it. If he wins Nevada and if he closes fairly close to Hillary Clinton in South Carolina, and the fact that they're getting close in the national polls, they're getting pretty close, what type of situation would that put Hillary Clinton in, and the momentum that would come from that? Now, I think this is Solomon from DC. Is this Solomon from DC?
Yes, it is.
Solomon, you sent me this article. You have quite the timing. Tell me more about this article from the 538 blog.
Yes. So I meant to send it along with an embassy article I have in front of me right now called the Sanders Coalition. And they're both essentially saying that, for better or worse, the Obama coalition is already essentially done, that both Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders have taken that Bernie has basically taken a piece of Obama's coalition in 2008 and a piece of Hillary Clinton's coalition in 2008, and Hillary Clinton has done the same. That she has pieces of Obama's coalition and hers, and they basically just completely rearranged the makeup of two parts of the Democratic primary coalition, and it's which one's going to win where is going to be the real test. And speaking of the 538 poll, which the Young Turks actually talked about in their show today, where Cenk made the assertion that March 15th, the Ides of March, is going to be the date that pretty much sets the pace for the rest of the election in terms of who's going to win. Although he thinks it's still going to keep going either way, is that March 15th, it's going to be Florida, Ohio, Missouri, and Pennsylvania. All huge delegate, large population states, and they're going to be pushing hard for that. But the purpose of the article for 538 is it shows the different states they think Bernie will do well and Hillary Clinton will do well on, based on the two different polling models they see right now. The current one, which is Bernie closing the gap nationally, but still having a 12-point lead for Hillary Clinton, and the other, if something happens like Nevada, Bernie gets a win in Nevada and he completely closes the gap nationally, what states they feel will go where. And you see the way, because Democrats have proportional delegates, you see a path opening up for Bernie very clearly. And it could come down that even if March 15th doesn't decide it, California, which is the last state to go, which is also the largest state, could be like the last brawl for them before the convention. And this data that they've compiled, it pretty much sets the pace for how this is going to go. Super Tuesday isn't going to decide, despite the DNC's wishes. This is the reason they made Super Tuesday for several cycles. Yeah, 2008, it didn't decide. Both Obama and Hillary Clinton tied, and essentially tied. They both declared victory, but they tied in Super Tuesday in 2008. And it's most likely going to be the same, where Hillary Clinton is most likely going to sweep through the southern states, but they don't hold so many delegates as Massachusetts and Boston. And I believe Colorado is a very large delegate count as well. And Bernie is very likely to win both of those, as well as Oklahoma and I believe Minnesota.
Let me ask you this.
It's a definite win for Bernie in Minnesota.
Let me ask you this, because I haven't had a chance to digest this article. What's the final conclusion? If Bernie Sanders closes in Nevada, wins in Nevada, and gets in enough parity in South Carolina, he's already benefiting from a closing national gap. National polling, he's closing in on Hillary Clinton. What's their conclusion? He has a better chance to win if he gets those two those types of outcomes. Where's the linchpin in this whole conversation?
The linchpin, they said, is that if Bernie wins in Nevada, he's in really, really good shape, and that if Hillary Clinton does not beat him by more than 11 points in South Carolina, she is in a lot of trouble, because from their point nationally, she should win in order to secure her lead, because in South Carolina it's going to be a lead either way. So it's by what margin and in what demos she does the best in that'll be the good decider of how the race goes forward. But if they're saying if she does not win by more than 11 points, that's going to be an indicator of things to come across the board afterwards in Super Tuesday and March 15th, March 8th. They're basically saying that early March is going to be good for Hillary in terms of states, and late March and after are going to be really good for Bernie, especially if he does well in Nevada and South Carolina, and that after late March and into the next few months after are going to be a lot of Northwestern states, which will be really, really good for Bernie.
Yeah.
And so it's going to be an interesting, with the way that the tone is going to be set for this race, and the media is going to be interesting to watch.
So
but the delegate count is going to be very interesting to watch.
I want to point out this about the 538 blog. You know, at the beginning of the summer, not the beginning of the summer, August of last year, 538 put out an article about this is how Bernie Sanders could win. And the gist of the article is, you know, we're just going to do this thought experiment because in reality, he has no chance of winning. I don't know if you remember reading that article this summer, but that's essentially what they
I was
did.
very disappointed with Nate Silver and 538 for both Bernie and Trump.
Right.
Just complete refusal to see what was coming. I don't know why. Like, it wasn't just data. They were ignoring large parts of data that in any normal
election,
any other circumstance, they would clearly read correctly and say that this is a major trend, but they refused to see it.
And now
either one, and I mean refused because it was obvious. It's not like they missed it. It was they purposefully were obtuse and did not want to admit what they were seeing.
Exactly, and that's I think that's one of the biggest takeaways. Now they've released and it's important to point out, like, this is a great article, right? They have a nice model for whether or not, you know, he gets Nevada and whether or not he performs well in inside of South Carolina within 11 points. Great article, great data. And, you know, they're following the numbers on this one. But the problem is that they were part of that narrative all summer long. That was really some of that same narrative that kept your girl, it's escaping me right now, Elizabeth Warren, my girl, I love her to death. Elizabeth Warren, she looked at some of the same type of data and drew the conclusion from a lot of inside sources saying that she just could not win, when in reality, who was it? Was it Nate Silver or I believe Nate? No, it was Ezra Klein. Ezra Klein came out and said last week that for the first time, he realizes that if Elizabeth Warren had run, she would have gotten the nomination sold up almost already. So it's like there's this pre-game analysis that people try to set the expectations, not really based on real data, but they do it based on a projection. They want this to happen. And then in the reality, this thing is panning out to be entirely different than everyone was saying this summer, particularly with Donald Trump, but more especially with Bernie Sanders. Solomon, man, I appreciate you calling in. Well, what's your last takeaway for us?
My last takeaway was just something you guys were mentioning when you were talking about Georgia and what was going on there. Is that something that Z Giuliani mentioned on Twitter that just has me just constantly upset with the Democratic establishment, is that there's not even a Senate candidate. The Democrats couldn't find a single person to even put in the running for the Senate.
Right.
Not a single candidate, and that is just really disgusting to me, and that's something we see across the South. And it brings back this point of, well, Bernie shouldn't be elected because none of these things can be done in Congress. I mentioned this a little bit before, is that why Republicans have a majority in Congress. And it goes to this thing that Bill Clinton said that you mentioned earlier, that Bernie supporters of the Tea Party. One thing I will say to that I've seen a couple of people on the Intercept especially talk about, is that the Tea Party were obtuse, they were racially tinged, they were aggressively angry, but they got results. The Republican Party would not have a majority in the House and Senate if it was not for the Tea Party. And in response to this highly irrational, highly angry, easily defeatable movement, the Democrats completely laid down, and they got shellacked 3 times. And so for the Democratic establishment to say that they can't risk Bernie because they lose their whatever, I don't know what they're so worried about losing when they have such a small segment of governors' chairs and state legislators and
They're already losing
congressional seats left.
Yes.
That Bernie, who's the only one of the two candidates who actually says, I intend to create a movement to change that, where Hillary Clinton has never said or even tries to act like she thinks she can turn around the Republican-controlled Congress. She just tries to see what she can do with the Republican-controlled Congress, which is probably going to be a net negative for anyone with a progressive mentality.
Absolutely.
Bernie, whether you like the idealism behind his movement or not, is the only one of the two saying that I intend to change the makeup of Congress, and I don't intend to let the Tea Party be the only grassroots movement pushing in congressional seats and governor chairs across the country. I intend to up the ante on our side and do the same for us so we can at least even the score.
Yep. Solomon, it's always a pleasure, man. I've got to cut it right there. Appreciate the call.
No problem.
Thanks a lot. Folks, it looks like we're going to obviously go into overtime tonight. 857-600-0518, because I still haven't gotten to talk about Michelle Alexander, and I have a Noah Changa here with me, and who else to better talk about it with me.